Let's see. I just pressed it. Okay, now we are live. Ta-da! Okay, so hi everyone. We are back with the 9th edition of the Artist Living Room. And as we have been doing for this past month, we are making use of these sessions as an opportunity for all of you to get to meet our concert artists, which have been involved in a lot of group meetings and brainstormings and mashing up different ideas and different art forms together. And it's been a pretty hectic time, especially because everyone also has a lot of other commitments. But yeah, I wanted to bring them all together here to have a little bit of a round table where they can introduce themselves, showcase some of their work, and also share their thoughts and reflections on the theme of the project, which is embracing the shadow, a theme that has resonated with many, many, many people throughout the world. So our team has people from, well, in this panel, we have Navya from India and Agnes and Jamie, who are from Singapore, and Darren, who's from Singapore, but currently in Australia. But aside from that, we also have people from the US, from Africa, from Europe, and it's a very international community. And so it's a lot of fun and a lot of cultures meeting together and art forms meeting together. So without further ado, I will just introduce our first artist today, which is Navya from India, whom I felt an instant kinship when I saw her website, because she does a lot of things. So I'm kind of like, oh yeah, my person kind of thing. Anyway, so I'll let her introduce herself. So yeah, Navya, if you would like to speak.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So I'm Navya, I'm from India. Thank you, Valencia, for bringing us together and for bringing this theme to our lives, because I just feel like it's so important and pertinent right now in these times. So yeah, I'm a filmmaker, sound recordist, writer. I also like contemporary dance and I enjoy moving, studying the body and working with people. Yeah, I think I'm really interested in studying the human relationships and how we respond to each other emotionally. And I think through my work, I kind of create conflicts that make us question. Yeah, so that's about me.
Thank you, Navya. Short and sweet. So next we have Darren, whom I got to know a few years ago through an arts project in Singapore. And he was part of this team of youths that created a whole production together with kids as young as 6 all the way to 20-year-olds, which was a very fascinating production. And we haven't spoken for a while until I invited him to be part of this project. But he's a really talented musician, and I'm very happy to have him on board. So yeah, Darren, if you would like to say a few words about yourself.
Hi guys, I am Darren. I'm currently studying in Melbourne right now, doing a degree in drum performance. I'm not sure what to say about myself. I've got a piece I can show you guys to show what I can, to show what I'm currently doing. Yeah, so let me just share my screen right now. So something about this piece I'm sharing, it's a remix that I was tasked to do for one of the projects in school. And yeah, just take a look at it. It's called Walking on a Dream. So here you go.
running for the thrill of it, thrill of it. Always pushing up the hill, searching for the thrill of it. All alone, we are calling out now again. Never looking down, I'm just an aura of what's in front of me.
Yeah, so there's that, and yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I I play drums. I dabble in a bit of piano, and I dabble in a bit of music production, as what you guys saw just now. So yeah, I'm really excited to come and work with you guys and yeah, showcase what we all have.
Yes, thank you, Darren. I think you have been very memorable to all of us with your toilet paper background. He always has this background almost in every meeting. So I think we've come to associate you with these toilet papers, which I don't know if they started to become a thing since the pandemic with all the people buying toilet papers. Yeah, you know, I don't know if they were ever so popular before. Anyway, next we have Jamie Lau, who is from Singapore, a singer, and whom I discovered I've danced with before many years ago in Singapore, because after we spoke, she was trying to add me on Facebook, and she's like, wait, we're already friends. Like, it was quite a fascinating discovery. But yeah, we did some dance performances in the past, like way before. So yeah, Jamie, if you would like to share about yourself.
Yes. Hi, my name is Jamie. So I guess to me, I feel like first and foremost, I'm a creator. Like, I love to create, be it dabbling in different forms of creation and performances. And so I actually write and perform my own original music, which I have released since 2018. On you can find them on all digital streaming platforms. I just had a song out recently on Friday as well. And I guess for me, I've come to realize like one of my central themes of the stuff that I write is very much around the anxieties of the current generation. So I have things that talk about like the duality of the inner conflict in us, or our addiction or obsession with things in the modern world. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Jamie. So we're supposed to have another panelist after Agnes speaks, but let's see if he comes on time. But for now, we have Agnes, who is an actress based in Singapore as well, which another person that I didn't know at all before this project. But I think she has been very keen to learn and very interested to brainstorm and experiment, which I always appreciate. I love people who like to experiment. So yeah, Agnes, why don't you share a bit about yourself?
Thank you, Vanessa. So hi, I'm Agnes from Singapore. I'm a freelance screen actress who has recently also delved into the world of online theatre, because the pandemic has created new opportunities for me to create with actors and actresses all over the world. So I've just concluded an online piece last week, and it has been an inspiring journey trying to co-create and devising new ideas with people. So it's been nice to be part of this project and creating with different artists across different disciplines. And for myself, I enjoy doing things that give me new perspectives in life, which is why I think acting is one of the platform where I could really see a new world from the perspective of whichever character that I'm playing. But that also explains my love for writing, for traveling, for yoga, because I'm always put in a position of reflecting, pondering about life, and creating, having more mindfulness in a way in the different things that I do. So let me just show you a snippet of a short film that I've done recently.
还可以打得更大力一点。
谁这才打？哇！
要讲漏麻话啊！
再惹我把你买的东西坏掉了。
No。
Shut up！妈，这什么来的？
箱子。
废话，我又不是瞎了，我是说什么在我们家外面。
我买的。
全部。
人生总需要点娱乐嘛，孤独老人一个在家，很容易忧郁症的。哎，放我出去就什么都解决了哦。
买，全都买，尽管买。你吃了药就在家休息，不要乱跑。
我没乱跑，我用走的。
看来你只可以乖乖在家等我回来了。
喂，
这个是他送的，他出国公干时买的。他说这里买不到。
买不到。
这么巧？我老公有和你一个一模一样的领带，他说是他老板送的，所以他每天都带着。
我老婆也有跟你一样的手提袋。
我知道，我见过。
你到底想说什么？
That's about me. Thank you.
Cool. For some reason, I was thinking, I guess that film must have been made before the pandemic, right?
It is way before.
So
in January.
Yeah,
So
it was kind of funny that the old man was like talking about being let out of the house, and then the lockdown kind of happened.
So that was like my shoujo, consisting of 2 short films actually. But the first one was filmed in January, and the other one was last year.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, I don't know if Maynard is still gonna come. Let's see. But in the meantime, I want to move the discussion to the theme of the concert, which is embracing the shadow. And I think I'll go around kind of in the order in which we started, so it kind of goes the same. And please feel free to chime in and ask further questions if any of you guys want to do this. This is not a one-sided interview. But yeah, Navya, why don't you share with us how this theme, what about this theme resonates with you and why you felt drawn to the project, and maybe even how that has developed in the course of the past weeks as you have witnessed other interpretations from different people.
Yeah, I think it's a really vast theme, and I'm still trying to understand it because it's always going to be relevant. What has happened during the lockdown is that we've been spending a lot of time with ourselves, and that's great in many ways. And I have the privilege, and I'm lucky enough to have, the basic needs that a human being must have. So I've been questioning myself. So a lot of doubts have come up or reflections have come up. So that's where it began. And that's when I saw the theme. And what was interesting to me was to understand myself through you guys, with this theme. So I still feel like I'm on a journey of understanding it with other thoughts coming in. So for me, like always, the process is way, way, way more important than the output. So like this discussion or the various other meetings that we've been having is a healing process in many ways for me to unravel all this stuff that's inside my head and really look at what's beside me, you know, because I think as creators, we tend to stay in our heads a lot, and that can like be super looped. And then how to like see super clearly through that becomes important, I think, because if I don't know myself, I'm not able to convey my ideas to people or who I am or what I think, what I don't think. And then it's just confusing for everybody to relate or understand me. So I think clarity becomes kind of important in that way. How it's developed is I'm kind of working on 2 performance pieces at the moment with some of you people. And I think it is to do with I think the one question that comes to me is like, how can I be satisfied with what I have and be happy in that, rather than look beyond and reach and desire so much. Like, I think kind of what Jamie was also saying about the anxiety of our generation. And I don't see me as separate from our generation, or I don't see me as separate from other people who are living. Like, I see we're all like one unit, and we kind of have to figure these things out together as interdependent creatures. So it's not just about independence, but also about interdependence amongst us. So I actually feel quite interdependent with you guys, and I would like to figure out ways with the viewers and with you guys to interact and figure this theme out.
So something that just came to mind as you were speaking, I started wondering about, like, I've never been to India. I have met a lot of people who are of Indian descent in Singapore, whether or not they have lived in India before. But I'm wondering, what is the attitude towards like shadow work in your immediate culture? Is it something that is kind of commonly talked about and it's a common sort of thing to address, or is it something that you don't really talk about? And what is the culture like? What is the attitudes around this? If my question makes sense.
That's a really good question. I'm thinking about it as you say it. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is like mythology and how there are gods and demons. And demons are basically the ones that are colored in the light of darkness, the asuras, the rakshasas, that sort of thing. But at the same time, what's really cool is that there are many interpretations of all these mythologies where the so-called demons are unraveled and discovered. Like even Ravana, who's like one of the most popular bad guys, you know, the good over bad sort of thing. But actually he was really intelligent according to mythology, and he had his certain needs and he wanted a few things, but he was also a giver. So what's interesting to me is like all these shades coming together and overlapping and becoming a sphere. So it is there in all our myths. And there is a lot of conversation around it. There's this book called, I can't remember the name, but it's by this author called Khalid Hosseini, the guy who's written Kite Runner and all of that. And there's this quote that I really love that he says, which is, cruelty and benevolence are but shades of the same color. And it really struck me when I read that of like 4 or 5 years ago, that yeah, like there is good, there is bad, but what are these definitions and what are these stories and myths? And we're all layered characters, you know? So, yeah,
Yeah, when you
I
mentioned
think it's pretty,
Rakshasa,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so I was just saying that it's pretty there, and all we need to do is think about it. Like there are all of these layers around us, and it's present even in like our adverts. Why is a good advertisement supposed to negate another advertisement to become better? So why am I supposed to negate you to become better than you? And what is this sort of competition? So there are, yeah, these layers, I feel.
Yeah, I like what you said there. And it was somehow, when you were mentioning mythologies, it was making me think of the Hindu god Shiva, which apparently is like the destroyer, but at the same time, it's also the rebirth sort of symbol, you know? So it's not like this evil destroyer thing, but it's something that sort of is needed in order for the cycle to continue, you know, which I think is quite a healthy outlook on things, where it's not just like evil, you know. But yeah, I just want to move on before we go back to the circle. Darren, what are your thoughts on this theme? And I know you're currently in Melbourne, but you haven't really been there for a long time. But I don't know if you've noticed any sort of big cultural differences between where you are living now versus where you used to live, and also how it relates to the theme of the shadow. Yeah.
You know, I never really thought about my living conditions in comparison to like embracing the shadow. For me, when you first approached me about this topic and asked me to go and come up with an idea, what are my thoughts on it, I really actually looked into myself. Actually, my idea of it was shadow being like a representation of my past. It's all about looking back at the past and accepting all the good and the bad events that happened, uh, and embracing it, because it's what made me who I am today. And so the whole idea of like embracing the shadow is like embracing like the complete you, instead of just the good parts only and just rejecting the bad parts. I feel that yeah, in order to be to completely like be like the best version of yourself, uh, you've got to accept both parts. Yeah, so that's what kind of like struck me first. And it was really interesting when I met all the different artists that came on board, and they have like totally different ideas on what embracing the shadow is, and it's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Not sure what to say. This.
Does anyone want to chime in with comments or questions or ideas before I continue?
I think I completely agree with Darren in the sense that there will always be a bad part of us that we need to embrace. And shadow, in a way, shocks me as something dark in its way. It feels like a unresolved baggage that we had, or maybe some of the flaws and the inner demons that we have in ourselves on a daily basis. In fact, so to me, adding on to what Darren said, embracing our shadows to me is always a work in progress. I'm not sure for most people, but at least for myself, there will always be things that we fight on a daily basis. Be it whether it's really obvious or it's just deep down somewhere in your heart. So I think every day we make a conscious choice to be positive, to overlook certain things that are holding us back, to choose kindness over evilness. Even when you are put to the test where you meet difficult situations and difficult people, it's not always to be kind. It's always a choice that we make. So likewise for embracing our shadow and overpowering our own inner darkness is always a conscious choice, and it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Yeah, any other comments, ideas, or? Okay, so yeah, I just want to move the discussion to Jamie now. I know that when you wrote in the application, you felt that this theme resonates a lot with you because it links in with your upcoming work, which is now just released. And
Yes.
you mentioned earlier about anxiety and things like that. So I would just like for you to express I guess some of the things that you might have expressed to me, but I would like for other people to also hear your interpretations of this theme and why what it means to you, and what drew you to work on this even before this project, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I was just waiting to speak because it was so apt when Darren and Agnes, you guys were talking about embracing like the good and the bad. The funny thing was, when this whole embracing the shadow came about, I was actually just done with the song, and the song's titled "Beautiful Monsters," and in my cover art, the album art, right, is actually a face of myself, and the other half is an illustration of me with horns and everything, so like the monstrous side. So it's exactly like the good and the bad in one. And when Darren was describing his perspective, it felt like he was just describing the song that I just wrote. And I guess to me, it was like embracing the shadow really like jumped at me because I was in the mind of like the whole duality of things, like the duality of human nature. Like a shadow, it's always in the background. It's always the dark. There's always a lot of I guess yin and yang aspects to it, like dark and light, good and bad. Like I guess both Darren and Navya mentioned good and bad. Like it comes up so often. And I think really good and bad cannot exist without each other. Like what is good, what is bad? At the end of the day, something is defined as good and something is defined as bad only because relatively they are good and bad. It's not an absolute thing. So when we feel like we did something good or we did something bad, it's all our own mindset. And that whole idea of like embracing the shadow, sometimes it feels like you're 12, like jumping into the unknown, figuring things out. It's also, I guess, like a process of self-discovery, like what Navya said, you know. So it's really interesting when everybody comes up with their own ideas and thoughts, like what does embracing the shadow mean. Yes, they're different because of our perspective, because of our own thoughts and our cultures, but at the end of the day, really, if you think about it, they're actually really similar. There's so many like similar concepts and ideas and parallels that we raise. So it's really interesting, and at the core of everything, I guess, it's just our own questions and searching for the answers of humanity, I guess.
Yeah, what you said about good and bad kind of make me think about how at the end of the day, these are just the judgments we choose to make. I think in Zen Buddhism, they talk about this a lot, where, you can say you get into an accident and this is a bad thing. But then because you're somehow in the hospital because you got into an accident, you were not at your home when there was a landslide that killed your home. And now it's a good thing that you're in the hospital. So there is this interesting thing about how something that is bad can become good and vice versa. And how I think there is always this challenge to just perceive what is as just is, which is kind of tricky because we are so conditioned to like, oh, this person passed away. Oh, I'm so sorry. Condolences to your family and blah, blah, blah. Like this is almost like a platitude at a point. It's like you're expected to say something of this sort. Otherwise, you're insensitive or something. But part of the reason why I also chose this theme as for the project is because I do think that I think we can benefit a lot from healing that value judgment that we have around the shadow and about death and about change and uncertainty, where if we learn to sort of remove the badness of it in our perception of it, we can sort of be more whole. I think why shadow work has become such an important thing today is because it's been so repressed in many modern cultures, and also, which was why I was curious to ask Navya earlier about the cultural, how it's like in India, which is a culture I'm very unfamiliar with because I've never been there. But it's also quite known to be a spiritual place, so that was a fascinating thing. And yeah, I have a question later for everybody involved, but before I go to that, I want to let Agnes share her own thoughts about the theme. What were your initial thoughts? How have it developed since the project started? And anything else you would like to add that you didn't previously address?
Right. So I think for me, initially, when I hear about embracing the shadow, it comes as naturally as what Darren has mentioned. It's really about embracing a part of you that you left behind, or you find it hard to embrace, or you find it at some point you want to abandon, throw away, because it's just not the part that you want to be. But as you grow up and you start to realize that whatever flaws and whatever mishaps or negative experiences that you have kind of contribute to who you are today. And thinking about that, it has in a way transformed you. It makes you a more complete person and more willing to embrace yourself. And that embracing my shadow is a reminder of how I want to embrace that portion of me that I didn't once agree with or am proud of. But it's also because in this fast-paced world where I'm constantly being overwhelmed with social media, you see how people start to react differently before and after the generation of social media, societal pressures, mass media, and in a way, it's very easy to find someone losing themselves, or it's very easy to come across a friend to say, oh, I don't really know what to do with my life. I feel very pressured to do certain things. I have like fear of missing out on certain things because of all these external factors. And it's also a part about finding a part of yourself who seems to have been lost along the way, where you grow up and you get influenced by so many things, and you start to have different kind of pressure and stresses that you didn't really have back then when you were younger and when things were simpler. So to me, it's also about a journey of connecting with a lost self, be it and the thing is that it comes very unknowingly. The fact is that if you are caught up in a situation where you are just in the journey of doing without really reflecting or thinking about it, you actually don't realize how much you have changed or how much original self of you that you've lost until you really take a step back, talk to people around you, you start to connect with inner core of yourself through the different things that you do, be it creative, be it traveling, be it meeting new culture. You start to realize that there are certain pieces of you that you want to piece back, certain promises that you made to your younger self that you seem to have lost along the way. So for me, it's also about trying to reconnect and stay grounded to my past self in a way. To find back certain things that I feel that maybe I've lost, or I want to find back, or I could have done better, or even be more open to accepting myself for who I am and becoming a better version. And I think so far for the past few weeks, it's also a journey of absorbing different people's interpretation of what shadow means to them, and there's different creative platforms and ways we could share this idea. So for me, I came in with an open mind of collaborating with people across culture, across disciplines, and I'm glad to be a part of a collaboration with Jamie that's going to come out. And the thing is that even if we are not collaborating on an actual piece with artists, even being in a conversation with them and seeing how they perceive the world is also enlightening, because I feel that different culture really have different influences, and it all affects who they are and how they think. And I mean different countries have a certain, in a way, has a certain identity or certain values or traits that's attached to them. So as a Singaporean, there's also a lot of practical aspects of us that kind of relates to the idea of being a Singaporean. And it's really very nice to connect with non-Singaporeans and start to realize, oh, actually this is how Singaporeans tend to act or behave in a certain way, or we tend to put limit ourselves to a box. And it's only when you interact with people outside of your country and your culture that you start to think out of the box. So I think that's my biggest wish of coming on board, because it's really about allowing people to open up my mind even more and push your own boundaries. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that. Any comments, ideas, questions before I chime in? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so many things have come up. Actually, what Valencia was also saying about thoughts, I've been writing and I've been thinking about it. And so I feel like thoughts become perceptions, perceptions become actions, and actions become reality. So how do we kind of not manufacture a thought, but like work on our thinking process and how we perceive things? And like, I feel super grateful and thankful that I've met like really wonderful people in my life who are with me all the time. Like, I feel so lucky that, yeah, okay, even if I don't have this, or this has not happened well, or whatever well means, but I have these beautiful relationships that keep me alive. And I feel like, I think I want to just dedicate myself to these people who bring me back to my past self, like kind of what Agnes was saying. Because as I'm growing up, I feel like, yeah, I definitely want to know more about other things and people. And as I'm growing up, like, I'm layering myself. And then after a while, it's like, oh, I'm quite small over here and I have all of these layers, but I can't see myself clearly. So how do I get there? And that requires me to kind of strip off a few things, like, yeah, this resonates with me, this is real and it's true, but it's probably not true for me, but it's true in its own way. So to find that small little self that's sitting over there like a baby who has all these layers is quite, yeah, interesting for me. And it's been that sort of a journey. So I resonate with what you guys are saying so much.
What Navya just said made me think about how I always say we're babies born with a blank slate. And then as we spend our childhood, we are programmed with our environment, parents, teachers, other friends. And then you don't realize you are programmed, but you are programmed and you are unconsciously living out your programs. And then at a certain point, you realize you are programmed, and then you start to learn to deprogram yourself. And I think this is a universal journey of almost everyone. And I think the whole core theme about shadow work is about deprogramming, because I think the shadow kind of touches on psychological and emotional wounds that we acquire as children. And these wounds inform our behavior in a way, because they kind of form into fears, the things that kind of cause knee-jerk reactions in us, that trigger us, and that they can often be unconscious. My own journey into shadow work began with triggers, began with starting to be more consciously triggered. Let's put it this way, that in the past I will be triggered and I'll just be triggered. But sometime last year, I started being triggered and wondering like, why is this thing triggering me? You know, that was the turning point, because I started wondering why certain things were triggering me. And that sort of made me notice patterns. I was getting triggered by certain patterns that point to certain fears, like the fear of rejection and the hatred of being misunderstood and things like that. It was making me behave in certain ways whenever that wound is being poked, you know. And as long as that wound is not healed, I will continue to be triggered every time it's poked. And I think then the challenge is to acknowledge the wound and heal it so that I can be triggered and not trigger the other person back. Because that's what often happens. When you are triggered by someone, you react in a triggered way and they get triggered again, and then it becomes a whole, yeah, anyway. Yeah. So anyway, that's my ramble. If anybody wants to chime in to that, yeah.
I just had a thought, like when Navya was saying about how your thoughts turn to perceptions, into actions, into reality. I remember I was watching this video about someone sharing about this, which I thought was so interesting. She said it really simply. She said just like, she was describing about how, imagine like there is a huge lemon in front of you and in your mouth right now. And then she was describing the whole process about how you're feeling the lemon and bite down on it and how you feel the flesh and the sourness and whatnot. And as you go through the process with her, your body actually reacts in a way that it's as though you really like bite a lemon. And I guess the point was, it's such a simple exercise, but it really made you realize like, oh, it's just a thought, but immediately there is a physical reaction. And that's how powerful like our thoughts can be.
That's kind of like embodiment, right? Like embodiment of an emotion and a thought. Yeah.
So the question that I was gonna pose to each of you, and you can take your time to think about the response, is, and I would be answering this myself as well, eventually or first. The question is, how would you describe your shadow? In the sense of the unconscious of you, like what is it afraid of? What does it want? What does it strive for? You can interpret it however you want. It can be your alter ego. It can be your guide. So you can interpret it positively or negatively. But I'm kind of curious how you would describe your shadow. Take your time, and anyone can go first.
I guess for me, I kind of like link my shadow to like my weaknesses and something that I take for granted. Like I do not want to look at it. But it's just like that one small like bug, I guess, that's at the back of my head that's just like it's preventing me from getting like a great like a very good night's rest, or like preventing me from like feeling like total happiness and stuff like that. It's like there's always this kind of like fear at the back of the head, I guess, that kind of prevents me from feeling like complete emotions. Does that make sense? Yeah, so it could be a good, it could be a bad thing. Like it makes me careful, it makes me cautious, it makes me think things through like twice over. But it also could be bad, like it gives me unnecessary like anxiety, fear. Just sometimes could be just on the bed and just like the imagination just runs wild because it's dark and everything. I mean, literally and metaphorically it's dark, and like it just takes over, and do you guys ever have this like moments in bed where your brain is shutting down, your body's shutting down, and then your brain just goes like, hey, remember that one embarrassing thing you did 10 years back? That one thing that nobody actually cares, but it's big, but to you it's like the whole world is ending, that kind of thing. Yeah, to me it's
Yes.
it's a constant battle, and yeah, It's very interesting because like the whole idea of this embracing the shadow thing, I have to look at it straight in the eye. It's not going to be easy. I might never be at peace with it, but sorry, I might never be like happy, like total happiness, but I am willing to try to work with it and maintain like a balance, like what Valencia said, a yin and yang, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's that for me.
So it was sounding like your shadow is keeping you in the mind and not so present. Is that what you mean? So you're like living in the future or the past, but not in the now.
More or less, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting interpretation. And I think a lot of us can relate to that to some degree. Anyone else wants to chime in?
No, I just find it quite interesting because we get advice a lot from people who will tell you, oh, focus in the now and in the present. And the thing is that this is such intuitive advice, but yet I realize actually a lot of us are not living it without constant reminder. It's very easy to be reminded of past memories, the regrets, the things you wish you have done differently, and then versus thinking about the future, your aspirations. Oh, I wish that I could do this. And the thing is that delving between past and future, and you realize that actually right now in the moment, are we actually doing anything that's about saving the past, redeeming ourselves, and doing active steps now to achieve a foreseeable future? When you get in your head so much past, future, and then you overlook the present, which is in fact the most important thing right now. So I find that the advice to focus on the moment is actually quite important. It's very easy to overlook that.
Yeah. Anyone else has come up with a description of their shadow?
Oh yeah. So to that question, I feel that my shadow is like an opposing force. So I feel that I'm always someone who has two thought processes. When let's say I achieve a kind of success and I celebrate over my own achievement, there will always be a voice to tell me that don't be too happy. You know, this is just like a small thing out of so many things that you want to achieve in your life. And yeah, just got to work harder and push yourself more worthy than this. Whenever I feel like so desperate and so crushed, moments where I feel that I'm an absolute failure, and that this was to tell me, oh no, this failure is just part of growing up. You know, you get better from here, and you just have to move on. So in a way, my voice keeps me grounded and balanced in a way. I will never be too happy about my successes. Neither will I be too hung up about my failures because my voice will always give me the other side of the story that I should be mindful of. And I feel that my shadow is in a way I wouldn't say an alter ego, but it's more of like my complementary side. The other side that represents the absence of something. So yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I think that's how I deal with my shadow.
It totally makes sense. And I actually observed in myself a similar tendency to, I would say, to counterbalance anything that I consider to be excessive in me or around me. So if there's too much of anything, I will feel more like going to oppose it. Yeah, and I don't know if that makes us rebels or just balancers, because it's not really rebelling for the sake of rebelling, but it's just a notice of something that is out of balance, and then you want to balance that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I really connect with the word balance a lot because balance has a lot of interpretations, but it connects with me so much. Like balance, right? Even like it comes to a healthy lifestyle, it's always a balance of eating what you like, but eating what's good for you. When it comes to education, it's always a balance of academics, intellectual education versus creative knowledge. Thinking out of the box. When it comes to treating people, it's always a balance of giving and taking. So I think it relates for me as a person to humans and in life about basically everything under the sun.
Yay. Okay, cool. Anybody else wants to share a shadow description? This is not obligatory, by the way, only if you want.
Yeah, it's a really hard question, actually. Yeah, it's quite hard, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm relating to so many things that Darren and Agnes have said. For sure, like before sleeping, there are all these thoughts, and like what happened, and what was that like? Did I do a wrong thing? Like I often question myself, and I'm like, oh, am I a really bad person? Should I have not behaved like that? Should I have done it differently? Or what is my, am I always right? You know, those kind of things. And I obviously want things like I want a lot of things, and I want to feel safety, and I want to feel loved, and I want to feel wanted. I want security, and I don't know if they are shadows, but yeah, I want these things. And then I again go back to that thing about balance. Like, yeah, but the more you let it go, the more you relax yourself and ease into whatever is there, that's okay. So it's always like a conversation between desire and limiting the desire, perhaps. And that's where I feel the balance is hard to arrive at. And I don't even know if that is a shadow or it's me, because how do I separate that? Like, how can I say that that's a shadow and this is me and I am more virtuous, or I am not that low, but I am all of that as well. So I'm not, yeah, I feel like I have this idea of me, and that's not me. And to accept the me and acknowledge that idea of me becomes hard, but kind of what embracing ourself, our whole self, like what Darren was saying, is, yeah, so many thoughts. It's really hard to answer that question, and it's really hard to face myself like that, actually. Because I can easily not care. I can easily be like, I don't give a damn, you know? And I don't know if that's easier or harder, because if it's easier, then I'm layering all these blankets on me without really facing who I am, which will come back to me at some point. Like how even the cycle is, or a circle is, or karma is. So I think this is a great point to stop, reflect, pause, think, embrace, carry on like that. But those are, again, like, I don't know who's speaking right now. Like, I have no idea if this is my intellectual side, and I don't know like if I'll be able to do these things, you know.
Existential crisis. Yeah. Yeah. I agree that it's not an easy question, you know, and I guess it requires some degree of kind of vulnerability in looking into ourselves. But that is the challenge. I do think that as a culture, we have been conditioned to be less and less vulnerable. And that is what has led to, I think, a lot of the disconnection that we are feeling with ourselves and with our planet and with each other, because we are not made to feel safe, to be vulnerable. And I think especially this is true for men. I think there is a lot of like men need to sort of be the logical, rational, whatever mode, and not the emotional mode, and how that has been, I think, very harmful in general. I think that has caused a lot of suppression, in the same way that the very patriarchal culture that we live in have been suppressing the feminine in a huge way. I think that individually, the men, or whatever you identify as the masculine, has been suppressing the feminine in themselves as well, like a macrocosm and a microcosm of the same thing. And what that has resulted in, because when you have this, the way that an unhealthy masculine, I guess I can call it an unhealthy manifestation of the masculine energy, with aggression, with this competitiveness, needing to win and needing to look strong, and things like that, which I think a more integrated masculine doesn't feel the need to appear strong. He is already strong. He already knows he is strong. So he doesn't need to put up a front that is strong to compensate for a lack inside, and I think that that feminine suppression, which is, I think, getting overturned more and more. I think there is this rising feminine, a lot of people call it the sacred feminine rising, which I'm hopeful that it will sort of balance the thing that has been out of balance for a long time. So Jamie, do you have something that you would like to share with the question, or?
I think for me, like when you guys were saying how it's a really hard question to answer, right? I just thought it's funny because like when the process of like self-discovery, it's so hard to describe like who you are, and now you have to describe like what your shadow is, which is kind of like a part of yourself and like an extension of yourself, right? And I guess it kind of feels like I guess like that inner voice, that other part of you. And it's funny when I was listening to you guys, and when Agnes was describing about how sometimes maybe you feel like crushed or defeated, but then there's this other voice that tells you you have to keep going, they just keep going. Because sometimes I'm surprised, like there's so many times where in my pursuit of things that I want to do, I could have very easily given up, but sometimes I just think like, why am I still here doing this? Like, why have I not given up? I don't know if it's like a human survival instinct kind of thing, to like that it's like innate biologically in us, or I'm not sure, but like that was an interesting thought. I was like at the back of my mind when I was listening to you guys.
When you say about keeping to do something instead of giving up, is it in the sense that you think it's a positive thing that you're not giving up, or you think that it's actually better to give up? Like I'm a little bit curious.
I think on hindsight it is positive, but it just felt like sometimes it's like you're surprised by your own, I guess, obsession and stubbornness in like doing something that you want to do. Like, why are you still doing it? Like I thought I would have given up, but no, I'm still doing it.
Okay. Yeah. Like, are you talking about like bad habits or something?
It can be anything in general, or even like the smallest of things. It could be like the smallest of things, or it could even be the things that you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in one way you can think of persistence as a very positive trait, Yeah. But if it's persisting in something that is harming you, then you can think of that as kind of an unhealthy habit. So it's really kind of contextual. Yeah. For me, it's kind of fascinating how, like in relation to the question, I don't know if this directly answers the question, but in my natural state, I am super lazy, like super lazy. And so I find it hilarious that I somehow end up finding myself doing things that completely make it impossible for me to be lazy, like this project, and which is also what happened in the May concert. I had these 2 weeks where I was literally all my waking hours were spent doing only things for that project, where if I even spend time like doing something a little outside of it, I felt guilty because I was like, oh my God, I could be spending this time doing this. And sometimes I'm even sleeping less because of it, because I'm like, I need to be awake for more hours. And in the week of the concert, I was sleeping for 4 hours a day in general. And normally I'm like 7 to 9 hours of sleep a day. So it kind of becomes funny when I feel like responsible for other people. I feel very empowered and energized by that, in the sense that somehow the things that I would normally be dying to do, like, oh my God, I wish I can just relax and like read a book or, watch a documentary or something and just tune out. Somehow I end up putting myself in these situations where that becomes impossible. And there's a part of me that's like, man, I wish I have more time so I can like do these things. But at the same time, this also feels right. So I don't know if I would, let's say, describe my shadow as the sloth that keeps pulling me back to just be this lazy being who's just like, and somehow I need to sort of learn to master the sloth and not let the sloth be the master of me, so that I can still enjoy being a sloth, but I'm not sort of ruled by it, and that I'm doing things where I really feel this is on the path that feels right for me. This feels fulfilling, this feels energizing. And during the week of the May concert, I was even eating mostly like one meal a day with a snack, and I was not even hungry. Sometimes even that one meal feels a bit much, and it was as if I was consuming by creating. I don't know how to describe this. Yeah, it was like it was nourishing me somehow. And yeah, so it becomes a constant struggle for me to be in this the lazy and the productive. And then sometimes I'm like, am I being lazy because I'm like being kind to myself, or am I being lazy because I'm just being lazy? Like, it's the question. Like, yeah. And so that kind of came up, and the other thing that came up, I suppose, was the child inside of me that gets triggered by things unconsciously before, and now more consciously. I started noticing what are the things that if this happens, I translate it to mean rejection. But I kind of understood after a while that actually it is not really rejection. I'm just translating it as rejection. This person is saying things or doing things that make me instantly assume this is rejection, but that person is a different person from me. Their brain works differently from my brain. So the things that look to me, that appear to me like rejection, it's actually not a rejection. So that became a big lesson of the appearance versus reality, and also just understanding how projections work. Because naturally we think, that person did and said this. If I did or said that, I mean this. You assume the person means what you would mean if you said or did that, but then they are not you. So that has been a very a big revelation. But also that has been something that taught me about my own triggers, my own unconscious triggers. Anyway, the rambles. Yeah, any comments, questions? We're already at the hour mark, and we can probably end soonish. But I would like to open the floor for anyone to share any last words, comments, questions. Dun, 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 dun. Silence. Yeah.
They're all thinking. No, the
Actually,
thing I
there's so much
realized
to think about.
yeah, like creative people. I won't call myself like highly creative, to be honest. There's tons of creative people, and I realized that creative people tend to think a lot. And And I guess that kind of help in their own creation, but it makes you always in the in the in the process, you know, like if I don't think there's ever a second where we actually like our mind a blank and not think or do about anything. It's actually very difficult. And I think just now Navya mentioned something like, is it easier to not think about and not do anything about it or do something about it? Actually, it makes me think that maybe it will be as difficult for me to not do anything about it. Because if I think about something, I will want to do something about it. And the fact that I'm always thinking means that I will want to make a change for the better. And to ignore it and make peace with myself is probably not going to happen.
No, yeah, I agree with that. It's actually to the point where you think until you overthink. Like, I find myself doing that a lot of stuff, and to the point where, like, you think you want to do it, then you overthink, and then you just, before you do anything, you puncture yourself out already.
Oh my god, I can relate. Yeah. So I guess for me the closing would be that yeah, actually Vanessa brought a good point about vulnerability. At the end of the day, you need to accept, you need to be willing to make yourself vulnerable to embrace your shadow. Um because of family upbringing and the culture we are in, for the longest time actually, um I always associate crying with being weak, so I never let myself cry in front of public, not at all, not even in front of my parents. So if there's anything that I'm going to cry, I could literally control them and only cry alone at night. And that was how I grew up to be. And that was what I grew up to believe in, being strong and not anything pull me down. But as I grew up and I start to be more enlightened about being vulnerable, I start to understand what people meant by saying that it's really about um understanding that courage is not about crying or not. It's really about just feeling and standing up. And crying is in the process of letting your emotions flow. And to make that happen in itself is a kind of courage. And to be able to embrace your own shadow and to realize how bad and good you are is also part of the journey. So I think if anything for to give someone a takeaway from our journey is to really allow yourself to open up and willing to accept things, accept who you are and take it from there.
Yep. The vulnerability point is a very, very important point, I find. I recently spent 6 months in California. And after spending about 3 months in Berlin, and one of the things that became very obvious very quickly, and this is nothing bad to say about like anybody, but I noticed that in California, there is a lot less space, safe space to be vulnerable. People project a kind of over positivity that I became allergic to very quickly, because it becomes a little bit like, you know, I don't know, like it feels like they're just being positive because they need to be positive. And that in itself becomes toxic, because then they hide the things that are not positive. And they talk about things that are safe. They don't like to talk politics because it becomes conflicting and it causes, disagreements, and it's uncomfortable. So there is, then it just makes people sort of play something, you know, they're always playing something. And for me, that became very uncomfortable, because I'm so used to connecting with people very deeply right away, because I travel all the time. So I don't like to waste time going through the layers of crap. I call it the layers of crap. You know, I like people who already handle their crap, so I can meet them right here, right, you know, in an authentic way. So then it became kind of lonely at times, where I felt like I'm not really inspired to connect with the people here, because it's just not at the level of authenticity that I find fulfilling. And that is a cultural thing. And I spent years in Singapore, And for sure, there are also elements of that where people are so focused on working and working and working that it's almost like they became very, very, very efficient, very efficient, but also not very in touch with here, you know, and which is also why I couldn't see myself growing old there, because I felt like a circle thing in a square hole. It wasn't fitting, you know. So that's why I started traveling. But yeah, I think vulnerability, first you have to be loving enough of yourself to be like, if somebody doesn't accept me for who I am, that means they just don't have a place in my life, which is contradictory to what most people feel inclined to do, which is that if they don't like me, I'm gonna be something they like, you know. So then it becomes, who's more important to you, for you to please, yourself or the other person? And that becomes the point. But also culturally, if you are surrounded by a space that doesn't make you feel safe to be vulnerable, it's also more difficult. So yeah, but I think with each person being vulnerable, that creates a ripple effect. And I think that it starts with you. Like, if you're willing to be vulnerable, then you touch the lives of the people you meet, and then they touch the lives of the people they meet, and it becomes a movement. So I think that's what we can aim for, hopefully. Yeah.
Just want to add to that, like, something that's come up even politically, and I'm sure that's true for many cultures, is like, what is the value of a human being, and what is the dignity of a human being? Particularly because of the pandemic, there were a lot of migrants in India who suffered a lot because there was a lack of food, there was lack of shelter. They were just walking on the road. Yeah, it was pretty terrible. And I have a house, so I was feeling like a lot of guilt that, yeah, I have all of these things and I'm doing nothing to help. And taking that to a very personal level as well. So that is like the bigger picture and the political level, which is constantly happening in the world. And we as artists, if I am an artist, I have no idea, but like, what is the responsibility, you know, that we have as a citizen, or even as an artist or a person or a doctor or a lawyer, all of these things that are there. So how can we value each life that exists, and at the same time value yourself and one's mental stability, which is super, super important. And if that means that, yeah, you need to like say that, yeah, that maybe this is something I can do, this is something I can't do, maybe we don't fit together, or those kind of things, it's super hard, but it's kind of important to have all these, I think, conversations and vulnerably accept them. And also for people to hold space for that. Like, if I don't hold a space for us to speak, or if you don't do that for me, we can't communicate. And for me, something that's come up really strongly during this pandemic is this ability to communicate honestly, freely, vulnerably, openly, so that we can share. And yeah, like, I think that has really, really come up, because people were like, we're still saying that we should socially distance ourselves, when actually heard on a podcast that, yeah, we're physically distancing ourselves. We don't need to socially distance ourselves from each other. In fact, this is when we need each other. I need you, and we all need each other. So that angle of interdependence comes along. Yeah. Thank you for bringing us together, Valencia.
And thanks for being here. I can try my best to bring people together, but if they are not there, then it's no point, you know? So it's like what you said about holding space for somebody else to talk. You're also holding space for me to organize things by being here, by receiving. You know, I'm giving and you are receiving, because if you're not receiving, I can't give. Yeah. So it's being thankful for the giver, but also being thankful for the receiver, because it allows the flow to take place. Yeah. So any last words from Jamie or Darren? No? Okay, so I guess we've come to the end of this session. I feel like this has been a very mind-expanding conversation. It's been really nice, the flow, and I think we have quite a nice number of people for this amount of time. I think that everybody had a good time to speak. Yes. Oh, did I hear somebody? No. Okay, and so yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts, for your presence, for being the receptors of everybody else's communications, being simultaneously givers and receivers. And I think I felt really grateful that I've, taken this chance to sort of gather people who like to think differently, and who enjoy these kinds of processes, and bring them together to sort of inspire each other and broaden everybody's horizons. I can see that this is where the very thing we need to cause less division in the world, and to turn division into diversity, because I think division happens when you are different and you want to make things same. Diversity happens when you are different and you are okay with having it different, where it's okay, because if it's not like if you think differently, therefore it causes division. It doesn't have to. It only becomes a division if you start attacking each other for thinking differently. So if you're just thinking differently, there is no problem, and I think this human element of voice, of direct conversation, is much more direct than like the text, which with social media and the internet has kind of taken over our lives, and we're so used to that form of communication that takes out the energy that comes with the voice and the human presence and the face and the body. All of that gets lost. So yeah, I am hopeful that by talking about these things, it will inspire more people to talk about it, and also for us in our own respective lives to talk about it more to the people around us, so that it becomes normalized, and it becomes like, shadow work is like not a novel thing that you can only talk to a select few. Everybody goes through it, and we need to be able to sort of, share it. So yeah, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your perspectives. And those of you who are watching, all of these people will be sharing and showcasing their works in one way or another in the coming weeks. And I'm excited to see what gets birthed out of this chaotic organic process that is nonetheless, I think, very exciting. Yeah, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You're all muted. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. Have a nice day, all.
Have a nice day too.
You too.